Before you're there, we're invited to Wednesday Soup and Study, organ concert today, 3 o'clock, come for that. And as well, with the organ concert, if you can't make the organ concert, part of what we're doing is we're going to honor Carol Cleaver for her many years of service with us, so she'll be here today, kind of a surprise. And also we're raising money for our organ upkeep. In the back, if you can't make the concert today, we do have offering envelopes that go specifically to our organ restoration fund. We have our organ's 50 years old, and so we want to keep it for another 50 years. I was looking up some of the information on the organ. There's 1,114 pipes in that particular organ. And the pipes all have leather pieces to them that need to be upkeeped and repaired. So we have to do some repairing over the next year to make sure that they work. And so I was looking at the original paperwork on this, and Dexter Howard's name was on many of the things, if that means anything to you. So back in 1962, he was one of the people in the music in the worship committee that helped put the organ together. And so also I was looking while they were building and putting this organ together, the electricians union went on strike. And so the organ process completely stopped for a while because they couldn't get the electricians to come up here and do the work. But that finally got put back together. So we're grateful for this organ and the many years it's provided worship for us today, up to today, and we want to continue that. So come out to the organ concert, and you'll have a great time, 3 o'clock this afternoon. We're still taking donations. You can always, we're still taking our pledges. Pledge cards can still keep coming in, and you can also follow us along on social media anytime that you miss a service. Conversations with God. There's a lot of myths that are in our world that we constantly are updating and looking at and wondering, well, why did we believe that? Why did we believe that? Some of my favorite are that Einstein failed math. Well, he didn't fail math. He failed one test. So we have this long myth about Einstein failing math. He failed one entrance exam. That was it. We have this myth about that we have 5 senses. Well, we don't have 5 senses. We have 20 senses. Having balance is a sense, right? And so there's a whole lot of senses that we have. Sugar that leads to hyperactivity is a myth because it doesn't do that. You can take children who are on sugar-free diets and they're still hyperactive. It's just what they are. It's who they are. And left and right brain, we believe that now we have left and right brains. Not true, because our right brain can learn what our left can do, our left can learn what our right can do. And so all these things that we kind of take for granted that are just common myths. If we think about them, they are caffeine dehydrates you, another one that's favorite. It doesn't. Caffeine doesn't dehydrate you because when you drink the fluid with the caffeine, the fluid makes up for the caffeine, so you can't even dehydrate yourself that way. One of the myths we have that go through our minds constantly is probably about prayer. Probably what prayer is. For even today, Jewish people go to the wall in Jerusalem to pray. Many people from all over the world, they will come to the west wall to Jerusalem to pray, but their prayer is really kind of a one-lane direction. Right? Because prayer is about conversing with God. Prayer is more than just reciting the law, which for the Hebrew people, that's what prayer became for them. Reciting the law, that was prayer. It wasn't talking to God. It wasn't communicating with God anymore. It wasn't a heart religion. They lost that. What prayer became was simply reciting the law. If they could recite the whole law, they did their job. They were done with their prayer. And so reading the law was the same for them as prayer. And it changed. It changed from what God wanted to have with them. A relationship, a heartfelt relationship, communication, fellowship was God's intent. Not for them to recite the law, which God gave them in the first place. Tell you the law that I gave you. That doesn't it. It's just a blah, blah, blah. That's not communicating. That's just reciting something that God had already given them. One of the parable of the talents is an interesting story because it says something to us that we kind of miss and take for granted. The appearance of the talent was this: for the writer says, they went on a journey, summed the slaves together, and trusted his property to them, his entire property. When he gave 5 talents, 1 to 2, one another according to their ability. And to the one that just got 1, he says, well, you know what, I was afraid, I hid the talent in the ground, and that's all I did with it. And the others were rewarded for the great work that they did. Well, this isn't really too much of a Christian parable, is it? For you could be a Jewish person and get this one right. You know, invest the money goes up. You can be a Muslim person and get this one right, invest the money, it goes up. You can be an atheist and get this one right. You invest the money, it goes up. You don't have to be a Christian to get this one right. Right? If that's all it's about, investing money and hitting it as it goes up instead of going down, well, you win the prize. Right? So it's got to be a deeper message behind this instead of just hitting the investment on the upslope, which everybody hopes we can do and try to do. Right? So what's it all about? As for the one slave, the worthless slave, we're going to throw him into outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Not a very nice thing to do to a guy that doesn't really know how to trade or invest in everything like that. Well, sorry, buddy, you should have figured that one out, invested in trading. So, what's that about? Let me ask a question. Say that you were a person and you got invited to go on America's Got Talent, and you're there and you're sitting before the judges, and they even told you, they made it simple. Just give us your talent. We'll even give you a talent to tell us what to do. So just tell this talent before all the people and you'll win the prize. Just this one little talent. And here's what the talent is. The talent is that you love God. That's your talent. That's all you got to do. Get up before everyone and say, you love God and God loves you. That's all you got to say. Not very hard, right? You'll win the prize. You'll win all the money. You'll win the big prize. Not very hard to do, right? Well, apparently it is, because that's all God asked Israel to do. This one thing. This one thing. Just say, I love you to the world. You're going to be my people, my shining and bright people, and the message I want you to tell the world is, tell them that I love them. You'll win the prize if you do that. Could they do that? No, they couldn't do that one thing that God asked them to do. They were going to be the bright and shining light. God had raised them. He took them in the desert for 40 years to be his people. And then he was going to let them loose on the world to show that he loved them. How God took care of them in the desert. For 40 years, he fed them. He took care of them. He took them out of Egypt. He took them out of bondage, out of slavery. And they're going to be an example to what God will do to the world, how much he loves the world. And their talent was to tell the world, look at what God did for us. And he'll do the same for you. That's their talent. What did they do with it? They buried it. They buried their talent. They wouldn't do it. Instead, they go to the wall. They won't even leave the temple. And they recite over and over and over the laws to God. He's saying, wait a minute, that's not the talent. That's not the show. That's not what I called you to do. I called you to be a bright and shining light to the nations. You're sitting at a wall telling me my laws that I gave you. What don't you guys get about that? So Jesus decides he's going to come into the world to help everyone get it right. Because Israel won't do it. They won't pray to him. They'll recite the laws, but they won't pray. So Jesus is here. So where does Jesus go? He goes to the poor people. The people that aren't even allowed to come to temple because they're so poor. And what does he tell them? He starts from the beginning. He tells them, you got to get things in order. First, second, third. And the first thing is to love God. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the basics. Number one is love God. Get that right. And so he gathers and he travels all around Israel. Tells them, I'm here to teach you. I'm the one who was the voice of the burning bush. I'm the one who led the people out of Egypt. I was there all along, from the beginning, and I'm back. And we'll try this again, because your heart is sick. Your heart is sick. It doesn't love me anymore. In fact, I don't know if it loves anyone. You guys have a problem. You've got sick hearts. And you don't love me anymore. Can you do something about that? Well, it's time to pray. But prayers come from the heart, don't they? They're not about reciting something against the wall, something we've learned, some prayer over and over and over again. Prayers come from the heart. And so if it doesn't come from the heart, it's just blah, blah, blah. There's nothing there. Take, for example, we want to get a job. So good thing to do is say, dear God, I want a job. Give me a job, and I want to make as much money as possible. I'm praying now. Give me a job. But where does our sick heart go? It doesn't go, I want a job. It goes, dear God, give me my dream job now, because I don't just want a job, I want my dream job. In fact, the job I want to make so much money, I want to be one of the wealthiest people. So our prayers, because of our sick hearts, go simply and quickly from, I want a job, to, I want to be like the guys down the street. I want to be like them. I want to have a big car and a big house. I want to be like them. I don't just want a job anymore, right? Because we have sick hearts. Because we have sick hearts, and we don't pray like the Word tells us how to pray. But Jesus came to teach us how to pray, how to communicate with Him. He says you got to get things first that are first, and second that are second, and third that are third. And the first thing is you got to put God first if you're going to pray. It's got to come out of your heart, or your prayers are just not going to get very far. As for the worthless slave, we'll throw him in the outer darkness. Will there be weeping and gnashing of teeth? Well, we'll get to that in a second here. Because what is the gospel anyway? What is the gospel? Who was Jesus sent to? Jesus says, I was sent to the people who are in darkness. Those who are sitting in a land of shadows upon death. That's who I was sent to. The ones who live in darkness, the ones who are on the outside, the ones who didn't make it, the ones who didn't even show up with their talents. Jesus says, you know what? You guys are in outer darkness right now. And I'm still here to be with you. It's second chance time. I've come for you. For the ones who've blown it, the ones who're supposed to be a light to the nations, you guys completely missed the boat. You completely missed everything. Well, guess what? You're still welcome. I've come for you. For the lost, the lonely, the broken, the ones who missed their calling, the ones who totally blown it with your families and your jobs and everything. You've totally made a mess out of your lives. Guess what? I'm here for you. To be a light to you who sit in darkness. To be a light to you who don't even have a thankful bone in your body. I've come for you. Why? Because I want to be a light to your darkness. Because there are no more places to go. I'm the last hope. I'm the last deal. I'm the last card on the table. And if you don't play me, you've got no hope. I'm here for the hopeless. I'm here for the lost sheep, the ones who've really blown it. Before we can pray, we've got to realize that our hearts are messed up. They're not in tune with God. In fact, they're not thankful most of the time. But Jesus says to come to him. For he will teach us. He will give us the light. He will encourage us. He will bring us back into the fold, even though we feel we're the ones way out there, the ones who've been cast into outer darkness. That's actually a good place to be, because that's where Jesus is. And if I want to be one place, I want to be where Jesus is. So when we start to pray, we want to aim our prayers in the right direction. Not towards big houses, big cars, and things, but to putting first things first. And what's first? To love God with our heart, mind, soul, and strength. First things first. When we love God, and all of a sudden, we feel like we can talk to him, and he talks to us, and we're communicating. We're not just speaking to a wall. We're not talking to an empty wall anymore. We're talking to a God who loves us, wants to be with us. In fact, has even given his life and his son to be with us. Abe Lincoln tells a story once that when he was running for presidency, his opposition was out to get him. They wanted to uncover every dirt thing they could think about Abe Lincoln as possible so he wouldn't get the presidency. So they finally found it. They finally got something on old Abe. So they brought a whole coalition of people and wanted to publicly humiliate him. So they came up to Abe while he was giving a speech one day and said, "Abe, we've got a question for you. Honest Abe, emancipator of the Americans, the one that cares for the slaves. Let me ask you something. In front of God and all these witnesses here, did you recently buy a woman slave? Paid money for a woman slave? A young girl at a slave auction?" And Abe looks around and says to everyone, "Yes, I did. Yes, I did. In fact, if you want to talk to her, she's right over here." So they brought the young girl up and said, "Did this man buy you at a slave auction?" And she goes, "Yes, sir, he did. Yes, he did. In fact, he gives me money every week to take care of a family whose mama's sick. He says I can go wherever I want because I'm free. But he pays me good money out of his pocket to take care of a family whose mama's sick." When the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. What is the gospel? It's freedom for us. Freedom to once again find our God, for him to be our God and for us to be his people. For those who are in darkness, he came to give us light. Those who've completely blown it, those who've buried their talents, he's come back for us to say, "I'm here." Let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.